for guitarists who are kind of at that intermediate level, who are wishing to sort of, they want to play this stuff, but they, you know, perhaps it's sort of, you know, if it's just out of reach, would you recommend that they played studies by a particular composer or in a particular style? What would you recommend they do? Or would you pick pieces by the composer?
I think that was a really great question, because I had to think about this in depth. I think in the beginning, studies are amazing. For getting your technique up and running when you're a beginning guitarist, and even to a certain degree an intermediate guitarist, studies are integral to your progress. And by studies, I'm talking the classics, the Giuliani, the Saul, the Carcassi. On top of that, then you add in the early Brouwer studies. You know, the later ones, not the ones that he originally made, the later ones, the ones he did.
The Nuevo ones.
Nuevo ones. Yeah, not the four sets of.
Because there were 20, isn't there?
Yeah, the 20, because the 20 are challenging, but they're challenging for different reasons. So yes, I think your golden age classical guitar, boom, you should be on it. However, once you get a little bit further on down the line, I think you should be looking at selecting your studies and only using sections of them. I don't think you need to play through the entire study. So something like Etude number 7 by Villa-Lobos.
Yeah.
I actually only play the beginning now.
Right.
I will go through it just to keep it up and running, but the beginning bit is the most important bit of that etude, because it's got all those scale runs in them, and so you can practice your scale technique. I do the first 6 etudes in sections. So for etude number 1, it's literally just this, the technical bit of etude number 1. Repeated. Over and over. And then for etude number 2, which is the arpeggio, it's this section here where you've got that. Over and over, just those 3 or 4 bars, and that's it. For number 3, it's that one section before it goes into the no. So I will literally do, and then reverse it, and then I'll go into the little fiddly bits here, and then I'll do different fingers. Etude number 4. That horrible opening.
I love those chords.
Yeah, I love them as well, but from a fingering point of view, they're a nightmare. And so it's like Fernando Soa's that the first etude from the 20 that Segovia did, where it's all left. It's all those left hand. It's the same thing, but modern music. Number 5, I've got to read that one, but it's just the one bit from number 5 where it's the into the F sharp, F minor, and then number 6, bar work is that really slowly, so that I am literally working on my bar technique there, pulling back, not trying to squeeze, and trying to get all the notes clear. And then I will do the right hand. Finally, last thing I'll do is I'll go back to etude number 1 and I'll play through the whole thing at like 110 or 120 BPM to get the blood flowing and the speed going. But I don't play the whole of them at all anymore.
See, Rhayn, this is why I admire you so much, because you can feel that you're very compartmentalized in the way you can approach. You can split things up and turn them into exercises. And of course, if you have to have this sort of analytical side if you're really going to get up to another level, which it requires a lot of ingenuity in approach. and you know, you've got to really love it to start with.
Completely. If you've got none of that, if you've got no reason to sit on the chair and practice, it's going to be very difficult to do these things.
And of course, these, you know, it's impossible that you can't just sort of learn. They don't just learn themselves. You know, there's you know, you have a horse race, and there's jumps, and you've got to make it over the hurdles.
Exactly. You know, I'm the kind of crazy that literally to learn my fretboard properly, you know, in the beginning I went up and down frets in my head before I went to sleep, naming the notes until I could learn the notes. All right. Then obviously you get those one string scales. Great. You know, again, being able to do them backwards. Because forwards, you're just doing your ABC. You're not learning anything. You've got to do them backwards. And then there's that great exercise where you literally, you find all the notes across the fretboard. But actually, it's better if you take a system like the Cage system and learn your key. So I spent a year on Caged, just shy of a year. I got fed up eventually. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't manage a year because I think I managed the best part of 8 or 9 months. 1 week, 1 key center. So I started at C, then went to D, to E, to F, to G, and just worked my way, and in the flat keys as well, and being able to roll around that Cage system, chords, and then be able to do the pentatonic, diatonic, arpeggios, and then that was my morning warm-up for a year so that I could get a handle on the different key centers, because that feeds into guitar. So that's the kind of crazy that I am, and that's the kind of crazy you need to be to a certain degree. And I think,
in other words, you're using the exercises as a way of learning yourself and just familiarity.
Completely. And I think once you've hit intermediate to advanced, you should be taking the exercises out the music anyway, of the music that you're learning. So if the music is, because most of the music at that level is difficult anyway, it really is challenging, and so you make a micro study or a mini study out of that section and go from there.
Because I guess it can be really intimidating to someone if you're playing, say, Villa-Lobos study number 4 with all of those chords, and you're failing to put names to the chords, then you've actually lost. I think you lose a key component, which is obviously, because if you're going to memorize something, either they are a bunch of positions, and you know, there's this one of the problems with a lot of guitarists is they think of the shapes, they think of the positions and the rest of it, and it's no way to go about learning music, you know, because any key to learning, really, you need two thoughts to conjure kind of memory. So, all right, you might have a shape or some kind of record, but all it is just momentary recognition. But it's not understanding. There's no comprehension there. It's just a kind of recognition. Yeah. But if you can couple that with some sort of theoretical name, that yes, you're moving through A flat and then you're moving into E flat, or if you've got some sort of harmonic knowledge.
It's essential. It is essential because what you're relying on then is just physical memory. You've got this feeling of that shape, and it moves to this shape. So when I teach, a lot of the times I will say to them, I think it's like 4 or 5 different types of memory you should be using. So obviously you've got that physical memory, the memory of the C. Then you've got the actual visual memory, what C looks like. C looks like this, and I'm used to seeing C like that. But then also you've got the oral memory. C sounds like this. And then eventually you have that theoretical knowledge which you slap on top and say, this is a C, and it's built up of, a C, an E, a G, and another E. That's the kind of layering of where you should be at. At the beginning, you're learning just the notes, but at some point, somewhere along the way, you need to bring in all of those. And once something has a fantastic melody, that melody gets stuck in your brain, and so you can sometimes get the point, and I can see it where they're stuck, and it's like, I can hear the melody,
So the
but
ear is
your
leading.
ear is engaged, but you have that moment where you paused and you're like, I don't know where I'm going. And it's a physical sort of the actual physicality of what it is. And so if you can just say, well, we're in this particular scale or this key, and it goes down through these series of notes via this, it gives you that little bit of extra sort of reassurance, I think. And that's the main thing. It's just that reassurance to getting a really good performance.
Have you ever tried looking at the score, like and memorizing the page?
Yeah.
Pure memorization. So so in other words, you're sort of developing it's like a semi-photographic memory, and there are other techniques you can use to build up your memory, such as
for me that I have. It's not a conscious thing, but I do when I'm performing under pressure. Sometimes I can actually get. This is going to sound weird, but anyway, I get the pages here. As I'm looking down on my guitar, I can actually see the pages here in my brain as I'm performing. But I read the score, and a lot of guitarists won't read the score. And I tell them so many times, once you've hit a certain few repetitions, you should be able to read the score. You should be able to hear all the notes in the score. And anywhere that you can't hear the notes, I can almost bet, £100, that is where you are not going to be able to play it under pressure. Because you don't know.
Visualization is a key component to obviously to memorization. So, and what I mean by that is if you can get used to the way the score looks and feels page by page, and obviously the lower down the levels you are, the less information you have to take in. But obviously when it comes to something like Koshkin's Toy Suite, I actually would that would be my nighttime routine. So I'd actually look at that before going to bed. I'd actually study it, just look at the page, and actually using your peripheral vision to study the page as an entirety, and then on a more focused level across the lines to see the patterns, to read the harmony, and to feel the shapes.
And also it gives you that ability to be able to shape the music as well, where you're not inhibited by your technicality. So you can shape and you can make the music do what you want. I think another tip is to do it like you did before bed, because then your brain works on it overnight, and so you're subconsciously feeding. Okay, it might drive you crazy because you're going to be hearing it all night, but your brain works on it overnight, and so if there are any issues, you're going to fix it. Yeah, completely.
Very powerful.
So important. And I think a lot of guitarists don't do that.
There are other techniques that you can use to develop this as well, which is one is playing the entire piece in your head in real time, feeling what's going on in the fingers. Now, anybody who's never tried this, I even play a very simple piece of music, like a very simple melody line, and then put the guitar down, and then see if you can think of that piece, and see if you can. So you're imagining you're sitting, but even though you're lying down, you're imagining that you're actually playing the piece, and you could feel the impulses being sent to your fingers, then
I'm all for that. That is a key technique.
Very powerful.
But that to me gives me, when I have to do it, if I'm going to do a recital on my own, that is one of the things that I will spend weeks before doing, just to make sure that I know that I've got it in, especially if it's new music. If it's old music that I know well enough, I will go through it, and it's just a case of bringing the notes back up out of memory. But for one of my recitals, I had to do the first lute suite by Bach, the entire lute suite. So I had a part-time job, handing beers out over the one summer, and literally, because I wasn't working all the time, that's what I was doing. I was stood there, ready to serve, but going through the Bach piece in real time in my head. And then as soon as I had it, I'd put it into a little crystal ball and sort of swallow it. And so I'm like, right, I've got that. That's inside. That's mine. Next section. It's visual, that creative visualization is one of the most important things that I think musicians have, that we should use more of.
Because the greatest aspect to this is, if you find you're memorizing a piece and you're playing it through in your mind in real time, and if you suddenly have this point that you go, what's next? That's the point that in the performance it would have broken down, and it gives you a clue as to which sections you need to glue together in your memory, because
Yeah.
of course there's any number of distractions when you're playing live. I mean, some woman walked in halfway through me playing the Koshkin Toy Suite, walked in with a bag of she had bags of fruit and vegetables and dropped the lot. And then everybody was conscious, and I can't remember which movement I was playing, but you can imagine, even if you're halfway through the Mechanical Monkey or the Doll with the Blinking Eyes, you know, you
can't get distracted, can you? You just literally cannot get distracted. And I love that about live performance, but I also hate that about live performance because you don't know what you're gonna get some days.
But everybody scrambled to go and pick, because people were thinking of me, and so other people got up to pick all this stuff up. So it made even more of a kerfuffle.
Do you know, I got two stories like that. When I used to teach at the Welsh College, coming up to exam performance time, I would say to them, right, we're going to do a full rehearsal of your performance so that you get used to it. Every week, go outside. And so the person who's performing goes outside. And then I say to everybody else, right, you are to make as much noise and as many annoying sounds as you can while they're performing. So, and being kids, they just fell straight into this. And so the first person didn't get this, so they weren't told. And it's generally my older students that I'd put on first because they need that. So they come on and they start playing, and then the class just starts dropping pans and making noises, scraping chairs, bumping, to try and put them off. It's a great experience. And it also makes it fun for everybody involved, even the person performing, because eventually they cotton on that this is what's going on. And so then they settle into the performance and they start ignoring everybody, which is what they should be doing anyway.
I find that, isn't it the small noises, though, sometimes it's the very small noises, the sweet rappers.
Yeah, completely. I mean, yesterday I was filming because I'm busy learning just for fun. I'm doing the Fingel's Cave by Mertz.
Yes,
which is it's not a difficult piece. It's just really fast. And so I was just doing a little film for Instagram, and I was playing along. And we have cicadas currently, and there was a big one stuck outside the door, and I was actually unconsciously listening to the damn thing pulse, and then it stopped. Believe it or not, it put me off. Because I wasn't concentrating on the music as much as I should have been, and the pulse put me off, and I'm like, oh, hang on, what's changed? And so yeah, it's really funny. It makes it enjoyable, but also annoying at the same time.
Now, there's something else I want to ask you about, specifically about atonal music, because it's something that really fascinates me, and it's something I know is a big problem for a lot of students when it comes to music that doesn't have any discernible scales, any discernible harmony. I mean, even music that's kind of starts. I mean, in Koshkin's Usher Waltz moves into some very interesting areas, but still, it's not quite atonal. But it's but even aspects of Benjamin Britten's Nocturnal. But for more inexperienced players, or just for players who are just used to tonal music, are there any? Do you find that there's any tricks to learning purely either atonal music or even 12-tone music?
Okay, so from a guitar point of view, obviously Brouwer, those 20 studies, he wrote them purely just for that reason. They weren't technical studies, and I think a lot of people forget this about, or maybe don't read the notes. I don't know. They're not technical studies. They're gonna help your technique a little bit, but they're actually more for your ear. He wrote them purely from that point of view. So straight away, Brouwer's 20 studies, go away and learn them, but then also go back to some of his earlier work. At the moment, I'm also picking up the Eternal Spiral. Do you know that piece by Brouwer? I mean, that is pure. That is his aleatoric.
I've got the music. I've sight read it for practice, but
yeah, and I mean, it's a lovely piece, and it's got some real challenges to it, but there are no discernible melodies and notes there. So once you've got to that level, then you go back and you have a look. But also, I think maybe listening to Berg, the piano music of Berg. Schoenberg's
the Opus 1.
Yeah, and Schoenberg's early stuff as well. I mean, it's actually really beautiful music. Even though it is written on a 12-tone row, it is fantastically beautiful. And if you're in the right headspace, you can get into it. So it's becoming more familiar with it. But you're talking to the converted. I love that music. I love what we used to call squeaky door music. because of that very reason. It breaks all the conventions of what you expect to hear. And if you've heard a certain level of music and a certain amount of music, you get used to hearing things as they happen.
Because I think about a year ago, I was playing. A friend of mine works for a publishing company, and he very kindly got me a copy of He just contacted me to say, "Would you like? We can get any music. You just tell me what you want." And it just so happened they had Schoenberg. There was a Schoenberg score, and I didn't really know the piece on the guitar. So I said, "Well, could you send me that?" And so I, as a gift, kind of back to him and to the publishing company, I recorded all 6 of them, and
Very cool.
The pieces were, I mean, the fingering was, the fingering was pretty good. I had to change some of it to make it more, I don't know, to make it more playable and to make a few connections here and there to make it. But I really found that because of the absence, I mean, I'm used to atonal music, 12-tone music, but I find that it allows you actually more room for expression because you've got to be a lot more. You've got to sell it to an audience.
Exactly. You can't just play it. You cannot just play that style of music.
Do you think that's the problem, that some people do play it without understanding it, and they wonder why people say it sounds cold?
Yeah, I probably do, and this is why something like the Nocturnal is a fantastic piece, but it's also a really big undertaking. You can't just dive into it and play it, and you have to take the audience with you. So that means you have to be more expressive. You've got to move and use more of the the tonal variations that we've got for the guitar, and that's where I think Bream really comes into his own. That's what he did, and that's why he was so good at all of those modern musics, like the Nocturnal, like the bagatelles. All of that requires that level of musicianship that sells it. Got to sell it.
Yeah, I think it's a good lesson for anybody if they're being told, and you think if you can't sell tonal music, how on earth are you ever going to sell atonal music? And honestly, if you end up, anybody who does say ABRSM grades, I know they don't do them in America. Do they do the grades in New Zealand?
They have their own system here, believe it or not.
Does it include atonal music as well in one of the sections?
It does. It does include some really good modern music, but mainly it's on the higher grades and the licentiate. They have a licentiate level here, so yeah, they do.
Yeah.
But one of the things I love about the ABRSM is obviously you've got to choose the 3 pieces, and so there's always a really good selection. And when I was teaching the Dodgson pieces, they're another fantastic resource that I don't think a lot of people play.
Fantasy Divisions is one of them, isn't it?
Well, there's the Fantasy Divisions as you get up. But there's actually the series of pieces that Dodgson did. There's a book of them. And so on the lower levels, there are actually Dodgson pieces in like grade 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, or at least there were the last time I did. So there's some really lovely music where, again, when I'm teaching it, I'm like, right, okay, that's fantastic, but this is what's happening. And so you're going to have to, and I don't, from that point of view, I don't say to them, right, you have to do this or you have to do that. I will literally say to them, right, here is an option. You could play quieter. You could play this option more staccato. You could play more metallico. You could play it, in the center of your sound. What are you going to do? Think about this music. Where is the music? What is the music telling you? And that's where, it helps younger players to really open up and experience not just playing, but crafting a piece.
Are you a long nail player or a short nail player?
At the moment, they're a little long, but I'm generally fairly short. I mean, my thumb is particularly short. I don't use that, the big old flamenco thumb. I don't have that. But yeah, I am. It's a midway.
Sometimes longer nails. I mean, because I share something in common with you that we both spent some time with John Mills. So,
really cool.
And he's a long nail player as well.
Yes.
And,
yeah.
So I mean, I certainly had masterclasses with him over a 4-year period. And I found his wisdom in fingering and the rest of it, but he's got the most beautiful tone and he's got really long nails. And funny enough, all the other guitarists that were there studying, they used to always comment on me that I always had long nails, and I was the only one. Everybody else had short nails, and I think they had short nails because it is a lot more difficult to control.
Yeah.
When they're longer, especially because you've got other things can, like my nails dip very slightly.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
You've got to
genetics
file around it, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's genetics, and then obviously at some point you get used to a certain length of nail. So I have a certain length of nail that I know once I start hearing it click before I touch, then I know that I've gone too far, because I'm very much a pad player as well. So I will literally pad play. It's not always nail. So a lot of short players will just go straight to the nail, won't they? So there's that. But yeah, I mean, Mills was.
It's very interesting being able to use the nail, even though you get a much thinner sound. I mean, Segovia used to get the sort of what he used to call it trumpets, didn't he? He used to play near the bridge, and he'd be using his just his nails, and he'd say they were sort of trumpets. And
but I mean, Segovia had phenomenally big hands too. He had fat fingers. I mean, really, really fat fingers. You look at those early the video of him in the Alhambra Palace playing the Leyenda, you can really see his nails and his hands, and there's not much movement. He's just doing this. But yeah, I mean, I think eventually it becomes a personal choice.
It's a wonderful. Some point, I mean, the guitar is a wonderful instrument for expressions. When you know, have you seen that film where he's talking about, he says, oh, and you've got cellos, and he starts, you know, with the thumb, and you know, and it actually really explains the guitar, the capabilities of the guitar, because it is kind of a mini orchestra.
Yeah, exactly. That's that famous quote of his, isn't it? Well, the quote, it's not his quote. It's
it's some.
It's not Peel. Who is it? I can't remember. It's one of the. It's
when you remember it, whoever remembers it first, let me know, and I'll put it in the comments.
Yeah, drop a comment below. I can't remember. There is. It's not. It is Segovia.
There is a famous quote, isn't there?
It's not Segovia's quote. Yes, completely. And so when you play 19th century music, where that is actually built into the music, then it really takes off. So Giuliani's Opus 61, you know, that fantastic piece. And I mean, it's got trumpets, it's got clarinets, you know, it's got the full string orchestra in there, and you need to bring that out. And that's where your nails and your tone shaping and all of that just so comes into its own.
You know, it shows you how creative you really have to be on a solo instrument. If there's just you, and how many times have you been to a recital and you've seen some other guitarist, and you're sitting there beforehand and there's just a chair in the room, and you're there. And I remember doing a recital myself, and some of my friends who weren't used to seeing me in that context, they came along, they were sitting in the audience, and one of them afterwards, he said to me, he said, "That was so intimidating." He thought he was saying he thought I was intimidating the audience by him going to a concert, and all there was a chair.
Just you have to look at me.
He thought that was so intimidating. He said, "You realise the pressure you'll put on the audience." He said, "You know."
That's awesome. Because normally it's the other way around, isn't it? You're looking out going, "I'm alone on stage. Don't look at me."
Isn't that incredible? Isn't that incredible that because, you know, from a point of view of nerves, you know, some if you're less experienced and you sit on stage and you're thinking, "Oh, they're all judging me," and the rest of it. But actually, sometimes it's a lot warmer than that. People are more encouraging. They actually want you to do well, and actually,
exactly,
they laugh if you get it wrong.
It's your brain.
You might get it wrong.
Well, the thing is, I tell everybody, you're going to get it wrong. You are going to make mistakes. It's how you bounce back from that. That's the important bit. You know, straight away, first lesson, all the time, I get students that'll stop after they make it. I'm like, no. Get used to not stopping. Don't make funny faces when you make a wrong note and you know it's a wrong note. Don't do that. Don't telegraph that. No one's going to know. They don't care. But the main thing I say is people will forgive you wrong notes every time. What they won't forgive you is playing out of time, because everybody has a heartbeat. And so they pick up on that more, and it's more disturbing for them. Wrong notes, they kind of understand. Like, yeah, it's difficult. You're on your own. Great. Playing out of time, they won't understand. So just stay on. Don't stop playing. That's the musicianship. That's like the key musicianship skill you need to be able to just play through a mistake and keep going with the flow so that it doesn't look like a mistake. That's super key for performance. That and preparation, obviously.
Well, you know, it shows why you're a very good teacher. and that you're used to a multitude of age groups, that you deal with, and you've got all that experience behind you.
I've taught a wide range. I mean, I finished up university. Because I went to university at Bath Spa, and so they had a guitar outreach program, the IGF. I got my training with them where I was a trainee teacher, and then I went to Cardiff to study, and then I started with CAVMS, Cardiff and Vale Music Service. Like everybody does, you end up teaching with a music service. But then eventually I ended up teaching for the adult education service as well before I fell into the Welsh College junior department. And so between those three different places, I've been challenged to not only teaching very young students, really young, 5, 6, 7 year olds, to much older students, and the needs change a lot.